Just a short time ago, President Trump signed an executive order to combat anti-Semitism. It focuses on what the White House calls pro-Hamas aliens and left-wing radicals. The order demands the deportation of non-citizen college students involved in pro-Palestinian protests. It also instructs the Justice Department to, quote, quell pro-Hamas vandalism and intimidation. Immediate action will be taken to prosecute anti-Jewish racism in leftist, anti-American colleges and universities. Harvard Law School Professor Emeritus and author of the new book, The 10 Big Anti-Israel Lies, How to Refute Them with Truth, Professor Alan Dershowitz joins me. Good evening, sir, and I want to dissect this executive order. First, as I understand it, it does not apply to American citizens. It's to people who are not citizens, right?
Well, that's right. And, you know, I helped draft his original anti-Semitism order back during his first term when he talked about universities having an obligation to treat anti-Semitism the way they treat other forms of racism and bigotry. And that had a big impact on college campuses. So I'm hoping this will have an equally big impact.
I'm not so sure it had a big impact because I sure saw a lot of protests, especially since October 7th. It seems like it may have just been a lot of fanfare signing it, because there certainly seems to be a lot of anti-Semitism proven by all these protests.
That's true, but universities like Harvard have been compelled to settle lawsuits. Harvard settled a lawsuit the other day, and that was very, very important. And it set up a process for dealing with it. This is not going to be a short-term problem. There's an enormous amount of anti-Semitism on campus. And ironically, it's particularly among left-wing woke groups, among some gay groups, transgender groups, feminist groups, people who would, if they tried to go to Gaza, they would be killed the moment they got there. And yet they're speaking up for Hamas. So I'm glad that the president and the administration is taking action against non-American citizens who are not entitled to be in this country. They're here as our guests, essentially, with student visas, and they're abusing it because so many of these anti-Israel demonstrations are at their core anti-American demonstrations. They hate Western values. They hate what America stands for. They hate what Israel stands for. And the other thing I'm hoping will happen is that the names of the people who participate in these pro-Hamas, anti-Semitic demonstrations will be published so that they will be held accountable, so that employers will know who they're hiring. The First Amendment gives them the right to be bigots, but it gives us the right to know that they're bigots so that we can judge them in the marketplace of ideas. It's very important that all of this be done within the context of the First Amendment, and I'm hoping that the new procedures will be implemented by universities and other places consistent with freedom of speech.
All right, let me just step you back a second. You mentioned the Harvard lawsuit that was settled. I have to tell you, I saw that. I was actually outraged that Harvard had to be sued to do that. I mean, it took that. It wasn't like Harvard thought, like, okay, maybe we did something wrong, which, it never should have gotten to that situation or anything, or we didn't set up the right situation for the students so that, there wasn't this anti-Semitism rage on the Harvard campus. They actually had to be sued. The students had to sue these adults. I realize the students are adults, but I was scandalized.
It was. And not only that, but Harvard resisted. It was like pulling teeth to get them to do anything. And they didn't do enough. For example, I'd like the universities to have a policy saying that when you judge people's ability to speak, there has to be one standard. You can't have one standard for example, African Americans. You can't say, oh my God, if you say that African Americans are whatever, fill in the blank, I didn't even want to say that, that's a violation. But if you say Jews or Zionists are, that's not a violation. So I would like to see a single standard applied by universities, and almost no universities apply that single standard. Harvard has said it would do that, but let's wait and see if that actually happens in practice. It's a good step forward. I think we're in a better position today than we were a year ago, but there is a lot to go because students, Jewish students, Zionist students, Christian Zionists, feel very intimidated today on university campuses, in classrooms, by teachers, and by the textbooks.
Well, it's no. People think news just happens. It doesn't. It happens because there's someone there to capture the moment, to explain it and share it. That's my job. I go where news breaks and give you the facts. Join me for The Record on Newsmax.